Okay, I'm sorry, I think there was a disruption in between. Right? Then what we did was we checked what was missing. Right? We checked what was missing. And we said that what was missing. Right? We checked that what was missing is an additional premise. Right? We checked that what was missing is an additional premise. This missing premise is known as the assumption. Right? This missing premise is known as the assumption. Right? This missing premise is known as the assumption. Right? Please note down these things. We first identified the point. We looked at the given premises. We checked what was missing. We saw that what was missing was an additional premise. The missing premise is known as the assumption. Right? The missing premise is known as the assumption. I hope all of you are clear till here. Okay? I hope all of you are clear till here. Now, what I'll do is, let me just remove this. And let me talk about the 3 criteria for an assumption. Okay. Let me talk about 3 criteria for an assumption. Okay. Let me talk about 3 criteria. Please understand each one of these. I'll explain each one of these with reference to the same example. The first is an assumption should not be given or stated. Okay. An assumption should not be given or stated. That is the first criteria. There were 2 assumptions. One was B is equal to D. The alternative one was C is equal to D. Please note that neither one of these 2 is stated in the argument. Okay? It is not given or not stated. So when I say it is not given or not stated, it is basically the missing premise. Okay? It is basically the missing premise. When I say missing premise, I can also call it the missing reason. Right? In the beginning of the class, we had seen that premise and reason mean exactly the same thing. Right? So missing premise or missing reason. Right? Missing premise or missing reason. And if I'm saying that it is the missing premise or the missing reason, make a note that an assumption answers the question why the point. Right? The assumption answers the question why the point. So this is the second criteria. Okay? This is the second criteria. The first criteria is it's not given or stated. The second criteria is that it answers the question why the point. Right? It answers the question why the point. So the point here is A is equal to D. So I ask myself, why is A equal to D? Apart from what's given. Right? So apart from A is equal to B and B is equal to C, why is A equal to D? The answer is because C is equal to D or B is equal to B. So it answers the question, why the point? Which is why in assumption questions, always identify the point first. Right? Always identify the point first in assumption questions. Right? Always do that first. Always identify the point first. Because if you don't know what the point is, you will not be able to answer the question. Right? So always identify the point first and then ask yourself, why is this point made? And the third criteria, if the assumption is contradicted, the point becomes invalid. Right? Just make a note of this. I'll explain it. If the assumption is contradicted, the point becomes invalid. Right? If you contradict the assumption, the point becomes invalid. Right? So if I look back at my answer, right? If I look back at my answer, the answer was B is equal to D or C is equal to D. Let me contradict one of these two. Right? Let me contradict C is equal to D. So if I say C is not equal to D, then do you agree that the point becomes false? Because if C is not equal to D, then I cannot say that A is equal to D. Or if I say that B is not equal to D, again I cannot say that A is equal to D. This is what I mean. That if you contradict the assumption, the point becomes invalid. Right? The point becomes invalid. Right? The point becomes invalid. So these are three criteria for an assumption. In this example, all the three criteria are being followed. And it's not stated. It answers the question, why the point? And you contradict the assumption, the point is wrong in that case. Right? Okay. Now let's take a regular question. Right? Now let's take a regular question. I'll give you answer options also. Tell me how many of those answer options are assumptions. Just a minute. Okay. I'm just taking a hypothetical case. Right? Let's say I say Gautam should not take the exam. Right? I'm just taking a hypothetical sentence. Right? I say Gautam should not take the exam. His parents cannot afford it. Right? This is the argument. Right? This is the argument. The argument is Gautam should not take the exam. His parents cannot afford it. Right? Now, do one thing. Just take a minute to think about what the possible assumptions could be. Right? Take a minute in that time, I will give you certain options, right? But my suggestion is, first, don't look at the options. First, think on your own what possible assumptions could be here, right? Then look at the answer options that I'm writing. Okay, there are three options I have given here, right? There are three options I have given here. The first one is Gautam's parents are poor. The second is the exam is expensive. And the third is his parents are the only source of money for Gautam, right? These are three options. Tell me how many of these three options are assumptions? Only the first one, only the second one, only the third one, two out of these three, or are all three assumptions? Okay? Tell me. Take your time, analyze the argument. The argument was before the answer options. It's an assumption question. How many of these three options? A, B, C, or two out of these three, or all three? How many of these are actual assumptions? Think about it. Vaishnavi, partially correct. Siddhant, different answer. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's analyze this question, right? Let's analyze this question. Right? Let's analyze this question. First thing that we do, and just understand how we analyze this question. The first thing that we do is identify the point in the argument. Right? Identify the point in the argument. Because we have just discussed one of the criteria that it should lead to the point, right? It should justify the point. So I need to know what the point is first. So tell me, is the first sentence the point or is the second sentence the point? In the argument, Gautam should not take the exam, his parents cannot afford it. Is the first sentence the point or is the second sentence the point? Just tell me that much. Because one sentence is the point and one is the reason. So which is the reason, which is the point in these two sentences? That is the first thing that we have to be clear about. Vaishnavi, correct. Siddhant, correct. The first statement, this is the point. Correct, both of you. The second statement is the reason. Right? The reason is his parents cannot afford it. That is why Gautam should not take the exam. So the first statement is the point. The second statement is the reason. Right? Now, the second thing that we do is we look at the answer options. The correct option should justify the point. What I'm saying is it should lead to the point, right? That's what I'm saying. So let's look at option A, right? Let's look at option A. Gautam's parents are poor, right? Now just think carefully. Option A, Gautam's parents are poor. Does this justify the first sentence or does this justify the second sentence? That is, Gautam's parents are poor. Is that why Gautam should not take the exam, or is that why his parents cannot afford it? So option A, is it the justification behind the point or is it the justification behind the reason? Siddhant, correct. Option A is the justification for the reason. Because if you look at it logically, Gautam's parents are poor. That is why they cannot afford it. So option A is going to lead to the reason, which is why option A cannot be the answer. Why? Because assumption will always justify the point. Right? Assumption will lead to the point. Right? So option A cannot be the assumption. Similarly, please note that the second option, the exam is expensive. This is also justification for the reason. The exam is expensive. That is why his parents cannot afford it. Right? So option B cannot also be the assumption. I hope all of you are clear about this. That options A and B are both justifying the reason. That is not what we are looking for. We are looking to justify the point. Right? We are looking to justify the point. Now, if you look at option C says his parents are the only source of money for Gautam. Option C, right? Option C combined with the reason. Please notice it justifies the point. Right? Option C combined with the reason justifies the point. Option C says his parents are the only source of money and his parents cannot afford it. That is why I can justify the point that Gautam should not take the exam. The answer here is only option C. Right? Only option C is the assumption. Right? Only option C is the assumption. Right? Only option C is the assumption. Please ask if you have a doubt here. This is a very good example in terms of conceptual clarity, that if you can understand this example, chances are you will be able to understand assumptions. Please understand why A and B are not the answers. Because they are not justifying the point. Option C is the answer because it does justify the point. Okay? That is why option C is the answer. Because it justifies the point. I hope all of you have understood this. Again, if you want, right? Again, if you want, what you can do is you can check those three criteria. Okay? If you recall, there were three criteria that I had mentioned. Right? There were three criteria that I had mentioned for an assumption. The first criteria was it should not be stated. Right? It should not be stated. So option C, which says his parents are the only source of money for Gautam, this point is not stated. So this criteria is satisfied. The second criteria was it should answer the question why the point. So why are we saying Gautam should not take the exam? Because his parents are the only source of money and they cannot afford it. Right? So this option also justifies the second criteria. Right? This option also satisfies the second criteria, right? So why should he not take the exam? Because his parents are the only source of money and they cannot afford it. And the third criteria and the most important criteria, right? The third and the most important criteria, if you contradict the assumption, the point becomes invalid, right? Please notice this criteria in case of this question, right? Please notice this criteria specifically. Option C is the assumption, right, which I said. So I'm saying his parents are the only source of money. So if I contradict this option, if I say his parents are not the only source of money, in that case, what I'm saying is he can get the money from somewhere else also. So if he can get the money from somewhere else, maybe what he can do is he can take a loan from a bank. He can get a scholarship, right? So if I contradict option C, if I can say that he can get the money from somewhere else, please notice the point will not make sense then. Because if he can get the money from somewhere else, then he should take the exam. And then I cannot say he should not take the exam. Right? Then I cannot say he should not take the exam. So this option satisfies all the three criteria. Right? It satisfies all the three criteria. Right? I hope this example is clear. Why options 1 and 2 are not the answers? And why option C is the answer? If there's a doubt, ask. Otherwise, we'll move on to a question in the sheet. Okay. Let's do question number 18. This one. Try this question. Okay. Just make a note of one thing. Right? Just make a note of one thing, that when you are doing these questions, there could be more than one point in the text, right? That's possible, right? There could be more than one point in the text. That's possible. In fact, that happens in this question, right? That happens in this question, that there is more than one point in the text. The correct answer, that is the assumption that you are looking for, right? The correct answer or the assumption that you are looking for could be related to either one of the points. Right? It could be related to either one of the points. So if you think there is more than one point, fair enough, no problem. There could be more than one point. Right? In that case, your answer could be related to one of those 2 points. Try this question. Take your time. There's no hurry. Take 2 minutes, take 3 minutes, take 4 minutes. Okay? Take your time. Try this question. Identify the point first and then answer it. Vaishnavi, correct. Correct. Take a minute more, the rest of you. Okay, let's discuss this. In this argument, there are 2 points. Right? In this argument, there are 2 points. The first is where it says this would result in increasing the profit. Right? So one point is that increase in profit will happen, and because total cost of production will go down. So this is the first point. Right? Increasing the profit as the total cost of production will go down. So this is the first point. Right? This is the first point. The second point is it has been proved that the company's policy does not harm the ecosystem in any way. Right? So there are 2 points. The first point is about profit. The second point is about the environment and ecosystem. So there are 2 points over here. Your answer can be related to any one of these 2 points. So your answer could be related to the concept of profit, or it could be related to the concept of environment. Let's look at the answer options. Option 1 says there is enough available stock of raw material which will keep the company running on the island for a few decades to come. Now, there are a few problems with this option. One is decades. This has not been discussed. This is out of context. Right? Because I don't know that they want to run for a few decades. Maybe they want to run only for 6 or 7 years. Right? So this is out of context. The other is option 1, has nothing to do with either profit or environment. Right? Because it does not say keep the company running profitably. Right? So it has nothing to do with profit or environment. So option 1 is out. Option 2 says the cost of transportation from the island to the market is less than the current transportation cost. See, this is not a necessary condition. Right? Please note, this is not a necessary condition for increased profit. Maybe the cost of transportation is not less. Maybe the cost of transportation is 10% more. But maybe the money that is being saved in raw material is 10 times of that. In that case, there will still be a profit. Right? In that case, there will still be a profit. That is, in spite of transportation cost being high, the company can still make a profit if they are saving that much in terms of raw material. And so option 2 is not a necessary condition. Because if I contradict option 2, the point doesn't become false. Right? So that third criteria, right? That third criteria is not getting applied here. So if I say the cost of transportation is more, the point can still be valid, that there can still be an increase in profit. Third option talks about environmental policy. So now we are talking about the second point. It says the environmental friendly policy of the company will be implemented faithfully by its unit on island Y. This is a precondition for not harming the ecosystem. Please note this. This is a valid precondition. This is the answer. Option 3 is the answer. This is a valid condition. Because if the company's policy is not implemented faithfully, in that case, the ecosystem will be harmed. Right? Because fair enough, the policy is there, but it also has to be implemented properly, right? So here criteria 3 will apply. Even if I negate this, that is, even if I say the company policy will not be implemented, by doing that, the point becomes false. Right? By doing that, the point becomes false. So option 3 is a precondition. That is, option 3 is an assumption. Yes, it's not related to the first point, it's related to the second point. Fair enough, that can happen. That's why I said it could be related to either one of the points. The last option says the company enjoys a robust public support across its native country. And this has nothing to do with either profit or environment. Right? Nothing to do with either profit or environment. Right? That's why we do not go with option 4. The answer is option 3 here. Okay? So this is how assumption questions are to be attempted. I have focused a lot on conceptual clarity today. We haven't done a lot of questions because if you understand concepts, you'll be able to do questions, right? So let's do one thing. Let's stop here for the day. Right? Let's stop here. What I want is attempt questions 17, 19, and 20. Right? Attempt questions 17, 19, and 20. These are assumption questions. Right? These are assumption questions. So in this sheet, attempt the remaining 3 assumption questions. We have done a couple of them, this one and the statement-based one earlier. Attempt questions 17, 19, and 20 based on the concepts that we have discussed in today's class. Right? I'll send across the answers. Question 21 onwards, we will discuss in the next class. Right? Question 21 onwards is a new topic. Right? That is a new topic that we haven't discussed yet. So question 21 onwards, we will discuss in the next class. As I said, there's one more class on critical reasoning. But please try these 3 questions, 17, 19, and 20. And these are assumption-based questions. And before the next class, please revise the concepts that we have discussed today, because what we discuss in the next class will follow from what we have discussed today. And so please revise those concepts discussed today before the next class. And any doubts you have in these 3 questions, 17, 19, and 20, please bring them up in the next class. We'll discuss them there. Okay? Thanks a lot. Thanks.